Maurice Nicol's Psychological Commentaries, Volume 5. This is from the Appendix, Birdlip, March 1944. Unknowing. I would like to say to you tonight that all knowledge in the work is connected with unknowing. I suppose that many of you think that you know. This is our usual state. You all think that you know what is right and wrong. You all probably think you know about your particular jobs. You all think you know the right people to know and the wrong people. Actually, in the work, knowing is unknowing, and what you thought you knew, when you begin to unknow what you were sure you knew, you are undergoing a change of mental outlook. You're undergoing a change of mind. You're undergoing metatonia, meta beyond Noah's mind. In this work, you have to get out of your mind. You have to get out of what you imagine you know, to try to see what you imagine and you know, and notice especially where you judge other people. You judge others from what you imagine you know. I would like you all to reflect on what you think you know for certain. It is amusing sometimes to see how people broadcast their opinions about other people in this work. This is because they think they know. The idea that work consists in unknowing is foreign to them, and as a result, they take the work from what they think they know. They are sure they are right by their acquired opinions. They never think of examining how these opinions have arisen and what mechanical influences from mother or father created them. The result is that you have a person who is always judging and condemning or approving from purely a mechanical level. This person thinks that he or she knows. To imagine that one knows anything is in the nature of an illusion. Let me ask you all this question. Are you sure that you know anything for certain? Why do you act? What do you act from? You act from what you think you know. You act from what you think you know is right. Now, let me ask you a further question. All of you are always thinking, feeling, acting from what you feel or think is right. Are you sure that your system of knowing what is right is actually right? You all think that you know. Now, suppose you ask yourselves this question: do I know? This is one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourselves if you do it sincerely. Notice how you continually judge others. Observe yourselves. You all have definite fixed ideas of what is right and what is wrong. All this belongs to the acquired psychology called personality. Are you sure that you know? If you feel that you know, then you cannot change. Your knowing will prevent you from changing. The idea of metanoia, translated as repentance, is to change your knowing, to change your mind. The Gospels say that unless you repent, you cannot see the kingdom of heaven. But the meaning is that unless you change your mind, you cannot change your level of being. If you always think in the same way, if you always judge in the same way, in short, if you always know in the same way and feel that you know, nothing can happen to you. Each of you here thinks and feels that he or she knows. But none of you thinks or knows from the ideas of esoteric psychology. None of you knows how to think in a new way. You must learn a new way of knowing, and in order to do this, you must unknow what you formerly knew. You must see that what you thought you knew is not knowing. Esoteric psychology is about a new kind of knowing. If you insist on knowing as you have always known, this work will never touch you. This work is new knowing, new knowledge. If you do not take this new knowledge into your knowing, it will have no effect on you. If you are certain you know about everything, and at the same time try to connect yourself with this work, you will not understand it. This work has to change your knowing. Many results take place in connection with this work. Some are good and some are bad. It is impossible to control the action of the work on different people. One can hand new knowledge to a person and it may be taken rightly or wrongly. If a person has a good magnetic center, the presumption is that he or she will take the work rightly. On the other hand, if the person has no magnetic center or a wrong magnetic center, which is often connected with wrong sex, then it is impossible to say what will happen. You must all understand that this work promises nothing to anyone. You can enter this work and make the best of it according to your level. The work does not care for you. The point here is whether you care for the work. The work may begin to care for you if you show that you care for it. Many people take this work from life attitudes and values. They imagine that because they have attained success in life, that they can attain success in the work. This is not entirely wrong. A person who is good in life may be very useful to the work eventually, but this only happens with people who have some idea of serving and obeying. You must understand that this is very difficult to teach a system that nobody wishes to serve and obey. The chief evaluation necessarily comes in here. A person must have magnetic center, that is, an acquired sense of the difference between life and this work. You can perhaps imagine a number of events happening to you, some of which are merely ordinary life events, your daily task, your profession, and so on, and some of a quite different kind. If you find this difficult to understand, try to think what kind of events have happened to you that do not belong to your business life or your domestic life and do not have any sequence and routine events. We are sometimes visited by strange events or strange inner experiences. Now, if you have no power of distinguishing between ordinary things and exceptional things, you have no magnetic center. To possess magnetic center means to have your life divided into two categories, the category of ordinary, everyday things, and the category of rather unusual things. If you pay no attention to the unusual things and regard them as hysterical or absurd or ridiculous or neurotic, you can be quite certain that you have no magnetic center. This means you have no power of discriminating between A and B influences. All your most valuable experiences, and here I mean potentially valuable, will be regarded as nonsense, and all your ordinary experiences will be regarded as sane, proper, respectable, and right. However, the capacity for growth in you lies in what is not usual, not ordinary, not commonplace. None of you will grow through commonplace experiences which are shared by everyone else. Your commonplace experiences belong to the service of nature. One can serve nature or not, but no one can get beyond serving nature unless he has done so. First of all, we have to be good householders. That is, we have to attain a certain level of ordinary efficiency. And you must understand that this applies to women as well as men. Life is a pretty bad proposition for most of us, and its difficulties fall on men and women in different ways. Life falls equally on a man and a woman, but in different directions, and the lash is pretty heavy. There is no escape from life until you have become, in some sense, equal to it. This work really begins in its most significant way when you have equaled life in some way. If you receive this work before you have equaled life, it may help you or not. If you have a good understanding of it, it will help. On the other hand, if you use this work as a refuge from your life, it will not help you. For this reason, it is said that the work that some people should go into life and some should not, eventually for this work is to act in its full way on you. You must have done something, borne something, endured something long enough to be equal to life. Some time ago, when I was talking about this, a question was asked as follows: what do you mean by being equal to life? It means being equal to your vanity. Everyone, of course, has a vanity that seeks its fulfillment. One person may long to be in the lifeguards. another to have a title, another to be a member of parliament, another to marry, another to be wealthy, another to be a millionaire, another to control some branch of finance, another to be a general, and so on. And on a smaller scale, the husband wishes to control the wife, and the wife wishes to control the husband, or the wife wishes to be the best person dressed in her Villa Row and to have the best furniture, or the man wishes to have the best car or the best garden, or to be the most healthy or muscular man in his little environment. All these ambitions and 100 more and others constitute ordinary daily motive powers. Now, when a man has satisfied his fantasies, when he has equaled the ideas of his false personality, he usually begins to die in an internal sense. Perhaps you have heard this in the work for people who have come to the end of life. Life, of course, means your life, and your life psychologically is what you want. If your life consists of wishing to make £1 million or being the greatest Hollywood star, then you have attained this. You have no further life, psychological speaking. Of course, you may go on living for a time, but if you do, you're already dead. Gurdjieff said once to Ouspensky, when Ouspensky had taken him to a London club of ancient reputation, "Why do you bring me into the presence of cemeteries and graves and dead people?" This club was very distinguished, and a great many members were sitting around in different parts of the smoking room. You will remember in this connection what I told you once, that Gurdjieff said, as a rule, when walking down the street, you meet corpses, people who are long ago dead in themselves. These people who are dead are people who think they know. Now, when you come to fulfill your ordinary ambitions, when you become the person you imagine you should become according to your particular fantasy, when you have made your million or become the most successful star or got better furniture than your neighbor, you become equal to life according to your idea of it, then you begin to die. If you always wanted a title and you get it, and you have become equal to your idea of life, when you have become what you wanted to be in life, and so you can rest content, you have become, say, better than your neighbor. You have become the best cricketer, or the best boxer, or the best dressed woman, the most witty talker in your club. You have become a member of parliament. You have become a notorious figure. You have passed your examinations. You have become a qualified doctor, a social success. You have become something in life that satisfies your ambition. This is in each case, equaling life. It is equaling your idea of life. Having attained this particular ambition, you feel equal to life. This is a very interesting thing to reflect on, what you wish to be and what it means for you individually to attain equality with life. If your ambition is not satisfied, you will not feel you're equal to life. Amongst all the forces that act on mankind in a purely cosmic sense, there are always forces that lead a man or a woman continually on and on to reach a certain stability or equality with life. In order to distinguish oneself from life, in order to make oneself different from life, whether the forces of life touch the villa or the palace, so to speak, it is a very difficult thing. And the force that is necessary to enable one to escape from these purely cosmic forces is of quite different origin from any of these forces created by life itself. Just consider for a moment, you can all see life acting around you. You can all see what life forces are acting the whole time in people. You can see jealousy, hatred, and so on at work in life. Do you imagine that life can get better as long as people remain as they are? Now, if you talk to people who are very much in life, you will always find they are certain in what they know. They are quite sure they know what is best. Although we are living in this so-called century of progress, which is characterized by the worst war that ever happened, everyone will tell you that he knows what is best and that he is working for his best, as it is called. One might reflect that it does not seem to be going this way. We seem to have made a great mess of things in spite of our scientific knowledge, but I do not wish to argue this point at present. What I wish to point out here is that everyone thinks he knows, and that by thinking he knows, he goes on inevitably in the chains of cause and effect. Let us take a person who thinks he knows all about the present age, all about the present horrors of war, the decline of inner feeling. I ask him a question: why is the world getting worse? Why do we kill everyone indiscriminately with bombs, etc.? He will say that he knows, that science knows. He will say that everything leads to progress and that there is an inevitable process of evolution behind every period of history. One might dispute this idea. Let me ask him this question: are you sure that passage of time is progress? Now let us come to ourselves. Suppose it is possible for ourselves to evolve. Do you think any of you can evolve if you know already? Many of you are perfectly convinced that you know. I would say that you don't know. The reason why you don't see yourselves is that you take in what you know is fixed and final. You think you know. You're certain you know what is good and bad. It is not merely your vanity that makes you think you know, but also your ignorance. From the standpoint of higher man, we are all ridiculous, just like monkeys. When you come in touch with this work, you should begin, if you feel the work, to realize gradually that you do not know and that you need to unknow. This is a very difficult experience. Of course, we all know we don't we? Then, starting from the idea that we know, we try to take in the work. We're all convinced that we know everything fundamental. We are all convinced that our lives are perfectly all right. And it is from this attitude that we take on the work and the new knowledge of the work. We ourselves, of course, know everything, and when we hear that this work is new knowledge, we take it in on the basis of our former knowledge. We have always thought that we were conscious, that everything we do or say is consciously, that everything that we do is a result of our own thinking, that we have will, that we can act as we like, and so on. The real trouble lies in what we think we already know, or that we know everything. I'm not speaking of knowing science, knowing history, or anything like that. I'm saying that we know what is right. The only phrase that I can find here that you all know what is what. If you really observe yourselves uncritically, which takes a long time and a long training, you would begin to see that something in you has always taken everything for granted, said what is right and wrong for you automatically, made your decisions, although you yourself have no idea on what these decisions are based. This meek person who works automatically is the person who always thinks that it knows. I'm quite aware that some of you will say that this is not right, this is not true. You will say, you do not pretend to have knowledge, that you are quite aware that you know nothing about science, history, politics. You may even say that you have no pretense of knowing anything. Are you quite sure you see what is meant? Are you going to tell me you never do anything from the idea that you know? You find fault with people every moment. You object to things every moment. I would be very glad to meet a person who was quite convinced that he or she knew nothing. Do not all of you act from knowing, that is, from what you think you know? If a person really felt he or she knew nothing, could he or she ever object to anything? But are not all of you continually objecting, finding fault, judging people, condemning people, and so on? Are you not liking and disliking, saying to yourselves, person is not important and that person is important? Well, let me ask you frankly, is not this the case in your everyday life? And is this not based on the feeling that you know? Do you understand what it means? Do you understand what knowing means? You all think that you know and act accordingly. The object of the work is to unknow what you know. Of course, you cannot unknow what you know unless you feel very doubtful about what you know. Try to observe yourselves from the side of what you feel certain that you know. Each one of you has feelings of certainty. You may be interested in this work and in its new knowledge, but at the same time, you're quite sure that you know already. Let me ask you this question once more. If you are convinced that you know already, how can you take in new knowing? Have you ever thought of applying yourself to what the work teaches? For example, let us take a shattering piece of knowledge taught by the work. The work teaches us that not one of you here has any real I, that not one of you has any power of doing anything, that every one of you is a mechanical figure reacting to life like a machine. But no doubt all of you know differently, don't you? You all think that you're capable of doing, that you are one. Integrity remains always the same. You do not notice that at different times you are quite different. You do not notice that at different times different eyes speak through your mouth. You act as though you were one and the same person continually at the same time. This is one example of how you think you know. In fact, you can be so knowing that you do not believe this new knowledge about yourself. To receive emotionally this new knowledge that you are not one but many contradictory eyes requires great courage, sincerity, and depth of insight. In a conversation that I once had with Gurdjieff, he tried to explain to me that we have a cheap life composed of small eyes, eyes that lie on the surface, that is, the moving parts of centers. He went on to say that no one could begin to develop if he or she had lived this small, superficial life. He said that in his broken language to me, necessary to be man, necessary man. He said in his broken language to me, necessary be man. I was working with him at that time in the carpenter's shop at the Institute in France. During a few hours of work there, he repeated this phrase, necessary be man. The starting point of this phrase was my irritation with some wood that I was trying to drill and which split. I began to take this as a reason for being negative. That is, I blamed the wood. Gurdjieff remarked to me, made me understand for the first time in a practical way what it means to be a man and not a piece of wood that splits. Now, this was new knowledge to me. What I had known before was changed into a new knowing. My old way of knowing was to blame the wood for splitting, just as all your knowing is based on blaming other people. I began to know differently. How do you know, all of you, in connection with what I am saying? You all think you know, yes, but you are sure that your power of knowing will ever lead to anything at all? All work knowledge is to make you know in a different way. Some of you try to keep this work alive in the present circumstances. Others make not the slightest endeavor to do so. In fact, some of you think that the work should be fed to you without your doing anything to earn it. All of you in connection with what I am saying. You all think you know, yes, but you're sure that your power of knowing will ever lead to anything at all? All work knowledge has to make you know in a different way. Some of you try to keep this work alive in the present circumstances. Others make not the slightest endeavor to do so. In fact, some of you would think that the work should be fed to you without your doing anything to earn it. This work is about a new way of knowing because it is new knowledge, and you must all pay for it by effort. To know differently, to know in a new way means that you can take everything quite differently, have quite a different relationship to things and people. However, one has to pay for this new knowing. If you expect it to be given to you all at once in a week, then you're making a great mistake. You're making a great mistake if you think that once a week for a few minutes you would be given understanding of this work. Let me ask you, have you applied this work to yourself? Have you endeavored to put this work into practice? Have you tried to remember yourself? Have you tried not to identify, not to be negative? Have you stopped self-justifying and thinking that you were better than other people? Have you applied the shock of the work to yourself? Now, you may all think you know everything already. Good Lord, look at yourselves. I ask you to apply the knowledge of this work to yourself and not to think how you know already. How marvelous it is when a person begins to unknow a little and not always know. How marvelous it is when a man or woman changes, becomes softer, quieter. How marvelous not to have to be what you think that you are or keep up this false personality, this pseudo self. How extraordinary it is to move towards real I, which is only moved towards the actual separation from a false thing in yourself, one by one. How marvelous to release oneself from this invention of oneself that one takes oneself as, and which costs so much force. However, let me add that everyone must become equal to life in some way before he can move forwards in this new goal of getting rid of himself or herself. You remember the idea of esoteric teaching in the Gospels, which is the same as this teaching because all esoteric psychology is the same, where it is said that in order to reach a higher level of being called the kingdom of heaven, one must be as a little child. You remember the rich man who was full of the idea that he could do, the idea of helping humanity. He was told to sell all that he had, separate from what he was good at, separate from what he was good at. It was said, you remember of the rich man who felt he could do, that it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. Do you all understand now from what you all have known already that this does not refer to riches actually, but to each of you individually thinking you know? You take the work externally on the basis of what you know. Do not you all feel here at this moment that there is nothing really wrong with you? That you all know what is good and so on? Do most of you take this work as something extraordinary and extra and still keep your old standards and feel rich from your various forms of respectability and adulation? Now, this is the difficulty. It is the trouble that lies between me and Fa. This is how the rich man can sell everything before he could follow Christ. Do you think you can follow this work with all your present attitudes, evaluations, self-esteem, self-feelings, in which all of you are rich? Remember what riches means esoterically. It means self-esteem, self-love, feeling that you know, feeling that you're always right, admirable, virtuous, unassailable. I would only add one thing, that you are not, far from it. But unless you see it for yourself through long observation, you will come nowhere. And this work will fail in its purpose. Regard to yourself. What a beautiful little darling you are. What a fine person you are. Are you not? And you have suffered, have you not? And what a comfort it is for everyone that you're on this earth.